Brought to you by Penguin.
Renia's Diary, A Young Girl's Life in the Shadow of the Holocaust, by Renia Spiegel, read by Anne Richardson. Forward. In the past 4 decades, numerous Holocaust survivors have published their memoirs. Some waited to write until they reached an age at which people, in general, are more prone to reflect on the past. Some wrote because they felt the world was now more attuned to listening to what they had to say about this genocide. Others were urged to do so by their children, if not grandchildren. Since the 1980s, so many memoirs have been published that it is easy to forget that this desire to write and record began far earlier. In fact, Holocaust survivors have been writing their memoirs and giving their testimonies since the very end of the war. By the early 1960s, 15 years after the end of the Holocaust, there were thousands of survivors' memoirs in print. In 1961, when Elie Wiesel sought an American publisher for Night, which had already been published in French, many rejected it because they believed there were too many memoirs in circulation. In his introduction to the French edition of Night, Nobel Prize winner François Mauriac acknowledged that Wiesel's was one among a myriad of Holocaust memoirs when he wrote, "This personal record, coming as it does after so many others," emphasis added. Sadly, with the passing of the generation of survivors, that trend is nearing its end. It is sometimes hard to imagine that these recollections, now much treasured and valued, were once eschewed by historians who preferred documents, despite the fact that most of these documents were products of the Third Reich, to personal accounts. These historians worried that personal memories were not as trustworthy as documents. Today's historians recognize the value of these works, particularly when they are juxtaposed with the documentary and material evidence. There are, of course, a number of methodological problems entailed in relying on these memoirs and testimonies. They are written ex post facto. Memory is elusive. It is impacted by more contemporary events. An individual's recollection of an event may be colored by how another person who was also present remembered it. A survivor may recount the details of an event in order to stress a particular point, a point whose importance only became evident to her well after the fact. This is true, of course, with any memoir or testimony. We write to make a point. It is particularly true when the memoir deals with a traumatic event. And what could have been more traumatic than the Holocaust? Moreover, memoirs are the voices of those who survived, not those who did not. It was with good reason that David Boder, one of the first scholars to systematically record survivors' accounts of their experiences, entitled his work, "I Did Not Interview the Dead." He knew that the voices he recorded were of the ones who survived, the voices and recollections of those who were not lucky enough to endure were, in the main, lost to us forever. I write "in the main" because we do have some of the voices of those who perished in the form of diaries, such as Renia Spiegel's. Diaries are different, not only because they allow us to hear the voices of those who did not survive. They are different from memoirs because they do not pose these methodological challenges. Irrespective of whether they were written by someone who survived or someone who did not, they are fundamentally different from memoirs because they are contemporaneous accounts. Simply put, the author of the memoir knows the end of the story. The diarist does not. The diarist may well be unaware of the bigger picture of what she is experiencing. For example, is the creation of a ghetto in her town part of a broader policy of ghettoization, or just something happening where she...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?